on page 128. How good it is that we are all together, dwelling together, and indeed how good it is that we are all here on this wintry Shabbat evening. Hinema Tov, found on page 128.
Hine ma tov manayim shever achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov manayim shever achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shever achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shever achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov manayim shever achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov manayim shever achim gam yachad. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Larry Smatroff is tonight's Shliach Chatzibor, our service leader. We're ready to formally welcome Shabbat, but first, make sure that we've greeted one another. If you haven't had the opportunity, say Shabbat Shalom. People on one side of you or the other side of you or behind you. This evening, Margaret King leads us in candle lighting. The blessing will be found on page 120, page 120, for Hadlakat HaNerot, the kindling of the lights of Shabbat.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As our brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehavlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen. Margaret, thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. We continue to welcome Shabbat. Shalom Aleichem. The Shalom Aleichem, our anthem of welcoming Shabbat, page 142. Page 142.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sechem Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Page 144, as we join together with Larry in the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'hamad divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Magala, Magala, uv'izman kariv v'imaru.
Amen.
Yehesh mei Rabba mevora, le'olam olam le'almaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitframam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yithaleh, v'yithalal, shemei dekudeshah, Brechu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbekata v'nechemata damiran bi'alma v'imeru. Amen.
Page 146, we invite those who are able to rise.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
I read on the bottom of page 148, Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv ha'ravim. And the bottom of page 150, Praise to Adonai who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev ha'amo Yisrael. Page 152.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
Please be seated, page 154, as we join together with Larry.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol miodecha v'hayu ha'dvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'dibartam bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'lechtecha v'aderet u'shoklecha u'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot bein einecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'hasitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Emet, page 156. I read towards the bottom of the page. When your children witnessed your dominance, they praised your name in gratitude, and they accepted your sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you together, lifting their voices joyously. Mi Chamocha will be found page 158.
Mi chamocha barim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei feleh, nora tehilot osei feleh. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yam bam bam bim bam. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yam bam bam bim bam. Ay 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 ay, yam bam bam bim bam. Ay 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 ay, yam bam bam bim bam. Ma'alechutecha ra'u v'necha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam. Zeli, Zeli, Anu ve'ameru, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yam bam bam bim bam. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yam bam bam bim bam. Dai 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 dai, yam bam bam bim bam. Yai dai 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 dai, yababam bam bim bam.
Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Hapoe Sukkot Shalom will be found on page 160 towards the bottom of the page.
Baruch atah Adonai haporei Sukkot Shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael.
Ve'al Yerushalayim, ve'al kol amo, ve'al Yerushalayim, Shalom.
Ve'al Yerushalayim, ve'al kol amo, ve'al Yerushalayim, Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haporei Sukkot Shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael.
On page 162, our prayer for Shabbat, Yismechu.
Yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. V'korei oneg, v'korei oneg. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. Amekadeshe Shavi, Kulam Yismeu v'yit'angu mituvecha. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. V'korei oneg, v'korei oneg, yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo, ratzita bo v'kidashto, chemdad yamim oto karata, zecher lemasei l'reishit, yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. V'korei oneg, v'korei oneg, yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat. Yismechu v'malchutecha shomerei Shabbat.
Page 164 begins the tefillah. We invite those who are able to rise. We'll be chanting the prayers on the right-hand pages, on the even-numbered pages, beginning page 164, continuing to page 170.
Adonai sifataytika ufia gita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher HaSe'avot V'Hivahot, Umevi gula livnei b'neihem, leman shemo b'yahava. Melech rozer u'moshiach u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ezra Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav lehoshia, Mechakel chayim v'chesed, Mechayeh hakol v'rachamim rabim, Sohomech noflim v'rofeh holim, Matir asurim, Umekayem umenato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha bal gevurot, Umido mehela, Melech meimid umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'neman atah lechayot ha'akol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol.
You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
Please be seated. Day 504. Last Shabbat, Israel welcomed home. Among the hostages welcomed home was released hostage Sagi Dekel Chen, who is related to our own congregant Catherine Albee, and whose family goes back to the same kibbutz as our own Ruth Holt. Foreknowledge that the return of the remains of innocent hostages kidnapped by Hamas would be traumatic has in no way softened its occurrence this week. The news became increasingly horrific as we learned that the corpse of a Gazan woman was substituted for Shiri Bibas. And now that Ariel and Kfir Bibas, her kidnapped sons, they were kidnapped at 4 and at 9 months. They were murdered, we learned, with bare hands. 2 more devastating developments from groups whose depravity is bottomless. We are reminded that even amidst Israel's strong advances this past year against Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and Syria, the struggle against death cults and their many enablers continues. Hence, in determining priorities, Israel's President Isaac Herzog emphasized what must be paramount, and he counseled, remember our highest duty to do everything in our power to bring every one of our kidnapped sisters and brothers home, all of them until the very last. 6 are to be released this Shabbat. Jewish life, and humanity too, demands our engagement and contribution, which begins as we denote our utmost values. As we've done here every Shabbat over the last 504 days, tonight we again pray Achenu for the redemption of all the hostages, our brothers and sisters, the whole house of Israel, who are in distress or in captivity, who stand either in the sea or on dry land. May the Omnipresent have mercy on them and take them out from narrowness to expanse, and from darkness to light, and from oppression to redemption, now, swiftly, and soon. Larry and Lisa sing the prayer in Hebrew.
Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, Hanetunim batzara, batzara uvashiva, Haomdim ben hayam uvein bayah basha. Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, Hanetunim batzara, batzara uvashiva, Haomdim ben hayam uvein bayah basha. Hamakom Yerahem, Yerahem Aleichem, V'yotziein metzara, Kiva, Ume'afelo le'ora, U'misheput legula, Hashtav ha'gala, U'vizman kariv, Hashtav ha'gala, Menomar Amen.
Silent meditation, page 180.
Yiu Ratzon on page 180. Yiu Liratzon Imre Fi Vehegyon Libi Lifanecha Adonai Tsuri Vegoali Adonai Tsuri Vegoali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Yiu Liratzon Imre Fi Vehegyon Libi Lifanecha Adonai Tsuri Vegoali Adonai Tsuri Vegoali.
This evening, as we offer the blessing for healing, we are mindful of Will Qualls, Ivel Kovner, Eileen Fallis, Margie Lipsis Shapiro, Dr. David Levy, Barbara Cassidy, Alan Stein, Sarah Lai Pennington, Tzvi Amina Bat Ita Michla, Tzvi Hirsch, Mary Lou Constance, Jason Peck, Joseph Gates, Karen Armstrong, Ed Vigilante, and Matt Schneller. There are also those for whom we pray privately. For those in our sanctuary, we invite you to share aloud the names of people for whom we likewise publicly pray this Shabbat. And for those on Zoom, we invite you to unmute and say aloud the names of those for whom we also pray this Shabbat. For all, may the Holy One send healing, shelter, and protection. Please, God, please heal them. El Na Rafan Allah.
El Na Rafan Allah. El Na Rafan Allah. El Na Rafan Allah. El Na Rafan Allah. El Na Rafan Allah. El Na Rafan Allah.
Again, the translation, please God, please heal them. Words by Moshe Rabbeinu, words by Moses, and melody by Linda Goodman, who is watching us on Zoom. Everybody can sort of see my PowerPoints. Feel free to come closer if you wish. While this is a little bit easy to read, trust me, it gets a little bit harder. And in fact, it does. This evening, our congregation participates in what we have been doing for several years in a special function called Repro Shabbat. We're doing this with a number of Jewish organizations. There's the National Council of Jewish Women. There is the Women of Reformed Judaism, a number of organizations together who have synagogues each year do this specific Shabbat with Parshat Mishpatim as Repro Shabbat. It's our honor to be amongst them. So, this evening, the focus was, I'll do a little teaching about why it is Repro Shabbat. And so, earlier this week, that's our yad. Sorry, the picture didn't come out completely, but that's our yad right there. That's our Torah scroll. This is from the Torah scroll, which is right in the center. And you can read it. It's actually blown up a bit in this picture from what I see when I took it in the Torah. It says, "V'chi yinatzu anashim v'nagfu isha hara v'yetzu yiladecha v'lo yihi ason anosh yanesh ka'asher yashit alav ba'al ha'isha v'natan biflilim v'ima son yihiyeh v'natata nefesh tachat nefesh ayin tachat ayin shein tachat shein yad tachat yad regel tachat ragel etc., etc. So this is what is read. This is the portion. This, I should say, this is part of the portion. This is actually 2 sentences plus in our full Torah portion. But this is why Parshat Mishpatim is about laws. And here are some of the laws. So, the English. Here was the Hebrew, and here's the English. I tried to put the most pressing material in red. I was told people read the red first. So when parties fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results. So I guess picture a barroom scene of cowboys hitting one another, and one pushes the other, and he falls and he hits a pregnant woman. And tragically, she miscarries. And a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues. The one responsible shall be fined according to as the woman's husband may exact. Right? So the husband's going to say, there should be a fine for the loss of that fetus. The payment to be based on reckoning, literally, v'natan biflilim, in accordance with judgment, with judges. V'ima son yehiyeh, but if other damage ensues, and this part, these words are sort of probably pretty familiar. The penalty shall be life for life, the Hebrew nefesh tachat nafesh, but nefesh, a nefesh is a life. We're going to follow that word in a few moments. So nefesh, life for life, and then you can see eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, right? So that's what, if I just go back, that's what we read in the Torah. That's why it's Repro Shabbat. So if I could ask, why is it Repro Shabbat? What is this teaching us? Don't be shy.
It doesn't sound like the fetus is all that big of a deal.
So yes, and I'm just going to repeat so that the folks on Zoom can hear us well, but the statement by Lisa is, the statement is this, they're saying, wait a second. If the fetus is a person, It would have been this life for life, right? So for those who are saying, well, conception, life begins at conception, and saying, well, that's what the Bible says, we're like, well, but wait a second, isn't this the Bible? This is the Torah. This is the book of Exodus. And it's saying instead, well, no, if other damage ensues, in fact, eye for eye, which the rabbis are going to say monetary damages is another story, tooth for tooth, but they're not even saying that. They're saying fined, payment, right? So the argument that abortion is grounded in the biblical literature seems to not take into account this passage, right? Questions? Please.
So where in the Bible or the Torah are other people getting the idea that abortion is?
That's a good question. The answer, the honest answer is nowhere. Now, there are other passages in the Torah, or in the Bible, there's a passage in the Psalms which says, in the womb I formed you, right? So, there are rabbinic understandings too that God is a partner with the parents, as it were, in sort of the destiny of having a child. But there's one case about abortion in the Torah. This is the case. Again, this is the case, and you're seeing its translation there. Abby?
Similar to what Lisa asked, I was going to say, if you were talking to Father Joe and you read him that bread, what would he say to you?
He would say, that's a very good point, Eric. That now there is, and within Roman Catholicism, there are understandings related to abortion. They come in the 19th century. They come in the 19th century. Janessa.
Is there also potentially a translation issue with the Christian Bible from the original?
That's a great question, and essentially where it can come up, it actually doesn't come up in this verse in terms of translation, because and the big thing which we're going to watch is this word nephesh. Literally, nephesh means a breathing entity, which also sort of makes sense because a fetus isn't breathing, right? In the same, but it says, as Jews understand it, thou shalt not murder. Some Christian friends will translate that verse, thou shalt not kill. There's a difference between killing and murder, which we're also going to see momentarily. Great questions. Other questions, or I'm going to... So there is a great rabbi. His name is Rashi. We talk about him all the time in Torah study. We talk about him all the time. People in Torah study saying, are nodding and saying, yeah, he talks about him all the time. So Rashi is an acronym for Rabbi Shlomo ben Yitzchak, 12th century, France, Provence, wine merchant and rabbi. Here's his comment, but we just read. So, but if there was no other harm or no other damage, so he said, that is to the woman, right? The one responsible shall be fined to pay the valuation of the fetus to the woman's husband. Again, he's explaining what the questions are. But if harm occurs, he then emphasizes, but if harm occurs to the woman. So what is Rashi saying right here? He's saying feticide is not classified as an act of murder. That's what Rashi is saying, 12th century. Now, we saw this way back in the Torah immemorial, but you're also seeing it right here. Elsewhere, Rashi will not classify the fetus as a nephesh, right? So that's the whole thing in a nutshell. So this is what you see. I just put the second slide because I want to emphasize this line. I never, up until actually this presentation, played with like red and highlighting before. It's really cool. Where have I been all these years? But if other damage ensues, the penalty shall be life for life. So the key word is other, right? Because you can see, if it's this, if she miscarries, it's one thing. If it's other damage, right, then it's...
But the slide you had before said if other damage to the woman.
That's Rashi's, correct.
That's his.
Rashi's gloss.
That's his, right. But the Torah just says if other
Damage.
harm, other damage.
Right. But the reason why Rashi will say that is because if you look at it within the context, right? So if the other damage is to her life or to her eye or to her tooth or to her hand or to her foot or any of those things, then that's the punishment to be exacted.
There's a statement on Zoom that asking you to repeat your question.
Oh, so sorry about that. The very good question was, how do we know that we're talking about the women? That's what Rashi was saying. But in context, it's clear that that really is the case. And generally what happens is that Rashi is repeating really the 1,000 years before him of rabbinic understanding. And so if Rashi says it, we take that as really good authority. Here's Maimonides. Mishnah Torah comes, Maimonides lived a bit longer, but 1180 is when they believe that the Mishnah Torah was complete. The Mishnah Torah is a guide that Maimonides wrote to explain the laws of Judaism. And so he has this case, a person who strikes a woman and causes her to miscarry. We just learned about it in the Torah, right? So he's talking about it again now. Even if her injury was caused unintentionally, right? So it wasn't purposeful, right? Those two cowboys fighting, one actually tripped into her, right? Even if it was caused unintentionally, he must compensate the woman's husband for the value of the fetus and the woman for injury and pain.
I had occasion to drive my sister-in-law 50 years ago when she was pregnant, and we were in a car accident. We were rear-ended, and, first thing I was concerned about was her and the fetus. And fortunately, she was okay. Baby was okay, baby was born healthy, baby is now 50. That's how I remember how long ago it was. Unintentionally, we were in a car accident. I was rear-ended. Was it my fault? I don't think so. Are people still compensating the husband for the fetus?
Well, we're in a different, when it comes to compensation and those things, we're in a slightly different area. So the question was this, and great, Larry can be our mic guy. But the question which was asked was, well, I was in a car accident where we were rear-ended, and one of the passengers indeed was pregnant. Fortunately, everything is okay, but how would that work now? That would be, the question now becomes, generally, it's part of torts. The Mishnah goes back to about the year 200 CE when it was edited. And the Mishnah is like an encyclopedia. It gives a lot of laws about Judaism. Here we have a Mishnah where it's a sad circumstance. It says, if a woman is having trouble giving birth, they cut up the child in her womb and bring it forth limb by limb, because her life comes before the life of implied the child. So what this is talking about, a very sad circumstance where I should say that up until the 19th century, childbirth was very dangerous. It's not, it's dramatically different. And infant mortality, all those things were through the charts in antiquity. Childbirth was dangerous. Childbirth still can be fraught with concern now, nothing like in past eras. So now let's go back 2,000 years. And if it's a question of the fetus or the mother, this Mishnah is saying it's the fetus which is destroyed because her life comes before the life of the child. How can they say that? They say, but if the greater part has come out, so in other words, if the greater part of the child has come out, one may not touch it, for one may not push aside one person's life in favor of another's life. So where does life begin in this Mishnah? 51%. Ben, I want to give you credit online for this because the majority, as soon as we get over to the majority of the delivery, other texts will talk about the head emerging, but you see the case, it's in the actual birthing process itself. It is not prior to that it is understood, again, as a life, as a nefesh. Here's the gloss by Dr. Mark Wachowski, was a leading Reform scholar, and he did a lot of stuff on Jewish law. The big points which he says is this. The Mishnah speaks, I'll probably read this easier from here than you guys will. The Mishnah speaks to a medical situation that demands a tragic choice between the mother's life and that of the fetus during childbirth. That choice, though painful, is clear. The mother is saved at the expense of the fetus because her life takes precedence over its life. That's not necessarily what's happening in some states, by the way. The mother's advantage disappears, however, once the fetus emerges from the womb. At that point, neither life takes precedent. We might say that each nefesh enjoys the same right to life so that neither may be favored over the other. Notice that the term nefesh, legal person, is applied to the fetus only upon the emergence and not before the moment in the birth process. This implies that until birth, the fetus is not considered a legal person, and that because it enjoys a lesser legal status than that of the woman, it is sacrificed in order to save her life. It would also explain why the killer of the fetus in Exodus 21, that's the case which we started with, is not culpable for murder. He has not killed a nefesh, a legal person enjoying the full moral protection of the community. Our friend Rashi, there's a case presented in Tractate Sanhedrin. That's the tractate of the Talmud dealing with capital crimes. Parts of this are going to sound familiar. In the case of a pregnant woman who is in mortal danger during childbirth, she may extend her hand and cut up her fetus and remove it limb by limb for as long as it is not emerged to the world. It is not a nefesh, a soul, and it is permitted to kill it and to save its mother. But if its head has emerged, one may not touch it to kill it, for it is as living offspring, and one does not set aside one nefesh for another. You're seeing how, these laws and these understandings get repeated and repeated. There's a concept in Judaism called a rodef, a pursuer. If somebody is pursuing you to take your life, you have the moral responsibility to defend yourself, even if it means taking the pursuer's life. That's what's being presented here. Now, about the fetus. A different section of the Talmud Yevamot, we learn, and if she is pregnant until 40 days from conception, the fetus is merely water. So the ancient Jewish understanding was not that there is personhood at birth. You can see until day 40, it is considered, quote unquote, merely water. Maimonides' Mishnah Torah on murder and the preservation of life. He says it is a negative commandment. A negative commandment means that it's not a thou shalt, but it's a thou shalt not. It's a negative commandment that one should not protect the life of a rodef, of a pursuer. For this reason, the sages ruled that in the case of a pregnant woman In a dangerous labor, it is permissible to dismember the fetus in her womb, whether with a drug or by hand, because it is like a rodent. It's like a pursuer pursuing her to kill her. However, once his head has emerged, one may not touch him, as we do not set aside one nefesh for another. And this is the natural way of the world. So you're seeing now, again, Maimonides, Mishnah Torah, again, 1180, the same idea. Originally going back to the Torah, and then the rabbis, now with Maimonides. Let's go to the Middle Ages, to the 1600s, to what's now Istanbul, then also called Constantinople, Rabbi Yosef Trani. Abortion is permitted for the sake of refuah, for the sake of the mother's healing, even though her life is not at risk. So this is now new ground. The fetus is not a legal person. That much we've already gotten from everything which we've seen. Abortion is not murder. He's saying this in the 17th century. It is prohibited solely on the grounds that it constitutes Kabbalat. Physically, you're not allowed to create harm or damage to yourself or to another person, right? So when you hurt somebody or do something which damages them, you're not supposed to do that. And so she's not supposed to physically harm herself. But in this case, he's saying, well, that prohibition may be waived when her health is at stake. That in this case, it would be okay. Rabbi Jacob Emden, he lived in Germany, what's now Germany, then a German city-state in the Holy Roman Empire in the 18th century, the 1700s. Abortion is permitted for great need, as long as the birth process has not yet begun, even if the reason is not to save the mother's life, but only to save her from the great pain it causes her. Right? So you can see that emotional distress and concern has been entered into the equation. Here we are in the Middle Ages. 1967, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, that's the organization to which I belong. It is the group of Reform rabbis. And this is a number of years before Roe versus Wade, but in the middle of the 1960s and its tumult. And it was calling for a broad liberalization of abortion laws. And you can see it recognizes the preservation of a mother's emotional health to be as important as her physical well-being. Well, you've already seen that they're not making this up, some crazy Reform rabbis making this up in the 1960s. You've seen where this comes from, going back first to the Torah and then to the rabbinic writings. Properly considers the danger anticipated of physical or mental damage, permits abortion, etc. Our conservative friends, this is from 1983, the Committee of Jewish Laws and Standards. And this is what our conservative friends said. Judaism sanctions abortion under some circumstances because it does not regard the fetus as an autonomous person. We've seen that the fetus is not a nefesh. This is based partly on the Bible, and again, the quote is exactly the quote which we started with, Exodus 21, 22, and 23, which prescribes monetary damages where a person injures a pregnant woman causing a miscarriage. The Mishnah, Ohalot, this is the one which we also read, explicitly indicates that one is to abort a fetus if the continuation of pregnancy might imperil the life of a mother. In other words, abortion is mandated, commanded to save the life of the mother. Commanded. That's the mitzvah in that circumstance. Later authorities have differed as to how far to go in defining the peril. The Rabbinic Assembly Committee takes the view that abortion is justifiable if a continuation of pregnancy might cause the mother severe physical or psychological harm, or when the fetus is judged to be, by a competent medical opinion, as severely defective. This is 1983. Janessa?
So, shouldn't all of this, So shouldn't all of this then allow for religious dispensation against in the states where abortion is illegal?
There are people who are
Um,
getting together to argue that.
Yeah, so what happened, and starting, I believe this was in Florida, was that this is the argument which is being made in the courts, is that what the state of, in this case, the state of Florida, but what the state is saying in terms of its rules around abortion conflict with the free exercise of Jewish religion. That's the case which is being made. I think some other groups have actually additionally sort of signed on to that. I don't believe that the case has been resolved, but yeah. So as you can see from a Jewish vantage, that there are times when an abortion is mandated. This isn't Rabbi Eric sort of making this stuff up. This is sort of what it all says. So, hence, Repro Shabbat, which we're doing and is happening in other congregations around the country. I took this pledge a few years ago, but if you go to their website, you can see, take the pledge, speak about reproductive rights in your rabbinic, cantorial, or other capacity as Klei Kodesh, as that's the term for Jewish clergy, Klei Kodesh, holy vessels. This year, and if you really squint, I just shared some of the Connecticut stuff, and so if you really squint, you can see Southbury. But what happened was, a few years back, I took this pledge, and so when the National Council of Jewish Women and others put out the list of rabbis who stand for reproductive freedom, you can see this place is mentioned with me. So, sexuality, human sexuality, it's part of the human condition. It's part of life. Here, B'nai Israel, our activism has been to promote historically Jewish and modern understandings of and inclusion. You see this in all sorts of ways. So our bylaws, and a number of folks were here when those bylaws were being originally worked on and voted on in 1997. That would be you, Larry, and you, Abby. Back in 1997, when we did our bylaws so as to define family in an inclusive way, which would welcome LGBT couples, which we did in 1997. So you see things like that. Our ritual committee, Pride Shabbat, and we have a really great Pride Shabbat coming up this year. Kevin Jennings from Lambda Legal will be with us. The work of Sisterhood, and Sisterhood has been involved in these projects and all sorts of programming which Sisterhood is doing. So we can see that this has been a congregational commitment. But what you're also seeing, and hopefully I won't make anybody dizzy if I go back to this slide, everything which we're doing is emanating from an understanding of this text, right? So we're doing it, and what we're doing is totally in keeping with Jewish tradition, Jewish understandings. Questions? That often happens to me. But it really is time for the Elenu, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and to do this, and huge thank you to Stephen who got it all set up so beautifully. Emily, we're going to invite you forward to open our ark. The Elenu will be found on page 586. The Elenu that we chant is the second paragraph down on the page. Everybody comes up. It's so heavy.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latei kedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot hadama, shelo sam helkenu kahem, v'go rabbeinu kechol hamona, v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu.
Thank you. Please be seated. Page 591, the Ne'emar.
V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo
At this moment in our service, we now call to mind our own beloved dead. We pray on their behalf and voice the confidence that they are remembered for blessing. I ask that those in mourning or remembering the anniversary of the death of a loved one to please rise if you're able when their name is mentioned, whether you're in the sanctuary or joining us on Zoom. During Shiva, we remember Rabbi Micah Ellenson. During Shloshim, we remember Nina Elazar, friend of Ruth Holt, and Irma Balinson, mother of Jerry, mother-in-law of Fran, and grandmother of Rebecca and Hannah. We remember the yard sites, the anniversaries of the deaths of Lillian Bisnov, Molly Leah Blank, Layla Ferrer, William Goldman, Gloria Golfin, Martha P. Leonard, Kenneth Mahler, Louis W. Millen, Irving Pollock, Catherine A. Raffel, Carol Siegmeister, Alvin Tendler, Hannah Wise, Howard Volgemuth, Eleanor Zimmerman. Should you have a dear one to add, please rise and say their name. We ask our online worshipers on Zoom to unmute and say the name of their loved one. For those in our sanctuary, should you wish, we invite you to offer a short remembrance of a dear one on our Kaddish list. Please raise your hand for the microphone. We remember Ariel and Kafir Bibas, their mother Shiri, whose body wasn't returned with them, and Oded Lifshitz. We also don't forget the Ukrainian victims of the brutal war initiated by Russia's dictator as part of his stated goal to erase Ukrainian independence. Our hearts are with them, not with would-be Russian overlords. Each week we mention 6 names amongst the 6 million murdered during the Shoah. This Shabbat, remember Friederike Neumann, Shmuel Wolf Feldman, Sarah Trachtenberg, Boris Vladimirsky, Manya Roth, and Joseph Thibum. In remembrance, in solidarity, and on behalf of those for whom there is no one but us to say Kaddish, we now invite all to rise if you're able. Our Kaddish prayer, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, Bialma divrute v'amlich malchute, B'chaye echon uvyome echon, uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehe shemei Rabbah mavarach le'olam alalmei almaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitale, v'yitalal, shemei dekudasha b'rechu, le'ela min kol berachata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Zuchanam levracha, may their memories be for blessing, and let us say, amen. Please be seated. Trustee Dana Packer has our announcements for this week. Make that Trustee and Maura Dana.
Hi, it's nice to see everybody tonight. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are glad you are all here. Thank you to Rabbi Eric for leading services. Women's reproductive rights is such a meaningful topic for our congregation and for the reform movement as a whole. Thank you to Larry Smatroff for his musical leadership and Lisa Siegel for her singing as well. Thank you tonight, Tech Maven, Steve Reps, and CJ. Are there any birthdays, anniversaries, or good news to share this week? No, we're going to pass on that one, okay. Torah study meets tomorrow morning at 10:30 in the library and on Zoom. Sunday Burrs will meet at 9:30, and Rabbi's Intro to Judaism class will meet at 10:45. There is no trope boot camp this Sunday. Also on Sunday at 1 o'clock, please join us for the next in the series of 6 lectures by Yuval Zelenkovsky by Zoom only. The topic is From Destruction to Foundation, the Evolution of Judaism Through Empires. Please see Abby tonight if you would like to RSVP and receive the Zoom code. Rabbi's Tuesday discussion group will meet at 11 a.m. in the library and online. All right, we're almost there. Next Friday night is Free Speech Shabbat. Please join us as we hear from 2 congregants who have much familiarity and insight on this timely topic. Lori Swartz and Jonathan Kapstein, also next Shabbat. We will officially welcome Janessa and Andrea Jameson into Janessa and Adria Jameson into the House of Israel as they are both completing their conversions to Judaism next week. Looking ahead to Sunday, March 2nd, Sisterhood is sponsoring an event with Eliza Levy, former president of the Israeli Knesset. Maybe it's Lavi, Eliza Lavi, that sounds better. The event is in the social hall at 1 p.m., and Eliza will join us virtually for a presentation on iconic Jewish women and their impact. Please join us for the Oneg in the social hall, following Kiddush and Motzi. Shabbat Shalom.
Dana, thank you. Yedid Nefesh is our hymn, which will be followed by Kiddush and Motzi, and Yedid Nefesh. I should know this by heart. Sorry. You will find it. Thank you. 636.
Yedid nefesh av harachaman, Yedid nefesh av harachaman, mishoch avdecha, el ritzonecha, mishoch avdecha, ya la 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 la, el ritzonecha. Yarut avdecha keimo la 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 Elohadarecha Yedi nefesh avarachaman Yedi nefesh avarachaman Mishok avdecha El ritzonecha Mishok avdecha La 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 El ritzonecha.
Kiddush will be found on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh b'reishit ki hu yom tevilah l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim ki banu v'charta v'yotanu kidasha mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinkaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. Good week.
Oh, the good stuff.
Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
May God's presence be with you and give you peace. Shabbat Shalom.